And as the Russia-Ukraine war rages on, diplomatic efforts to strike peace have picked up pace. And in the latest, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. And shortly after his meeting, Zelensky heaped praise on Trump. Speaking to journalists, Zelensky said that Trump's ability to have dialogue with Russian President Putin means he can bring about an end to the war in Ukraine.
We want to stop this war, and that's why I think President Trump he really can, because he has dialogue with Putin. Not everybody has dialogue, just even dialogue. He has dialogue with Putin on the same levels.
According to the Ukrainian president, the two leaders agreed on what post-war U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine would look like. While Zelensky did not share the specific details, he said the deal was done and ready to be signed by the leaders. Now, however, according to Zelensky, the issue of territory still remained unresolved.
We speak about one issue, which is the most difficult, which has been not solved, and I think that trilateral meetings maybe will show each other variants. It's all about the eastern part of our country. It's all about the land. This is the issue which has been not solved yet.
However, in an unusual departure from his warm rhetoric towards Europe, Zelensky slammed his European allies for inaction. He opened his speech at the World Economic Forum with a reference to the American film Groundhog Day, saying Europe and the wider world were trapped in a cycle of repeating the same debates while threats continue to evolve.
Everyone remembers the great American film Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and Andy McDowell. Yes, but no one would want to live like that, repeating the same thing for weeks, months, and of course for years. And yet, that's exactly how we live now. And it's our life. And every forum like this one proves it. Just last year, here in Davos, I ended my speech with the words, Europe needs to know how to defend itself. A year has passed, and nothing has changed.
While Zelensky was in Davos, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner were in Moscow, where the duo held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Later, Kremlin foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov described the discussion as useful, but said that a long-term settlement cannot be achieved without resolving the territorial issue.
Most importantly, during these talks between our president and the Americans, it was once again confirmed that without resolving the territorial issue, according to the formula agreed upon in Anchorage, there is no hope of achieving a long-term settlement.
Witkoff and the U.S. team will next head to Abu Dhabi, which will host a trilateral meeting involving Russian and Ukrainian negotiators today. Kremlin has confirmed the participation of Russian negotiators in the trilateral talks. This would be the first ever trilateral peace talks involving the U.S., Russia and Ukrainian negotiators. These high-stakes negotiations mark a significant escalation in diplomatic efforts to end the nearly 4-year-long conflict. Now, while the diplomatic efforts have picked up pace, Ukraine continues to reel from Russian strikes. Large parts of capital Kyiv are without electricity in sub-zero temperatures. The heavy shelling of critical infrastructure has left the city's schools with serious heating and lighting problems. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry has shared footage of its two 22 M3 long-range strategic bombers carrying out a patrol over the Baltic Sea. The bombers were accompanied by Sukhoi Su-35s and Su-30SM fighter jets. The announcement was made minutes after Putin began a meeting with Witkoff and Kushner in the Kremlin. All right, to discuss more, we are now being joined by Peter Kuznick. He's a professor of history, director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, this question seems to be very repetitive, but this time, considering a trilateral meeting, it seems relevant. How positive do you think you are regarding these talks, considering this is a first for U.S., Russia, and Ukraine to sit down on the negotiating table?
Yeah, that's a very, very welcome step. I'm glad to see them sitting down together finally. But that meeting is on the Trilateral Committee to deal with security issues. The United States and Ukraine have agreed on security statement, but Russia has not been involved in that yet. Russia and Ukraine had very, very different ideas about security guarantees. Russia has some red lines that Ukraine has been trying to cross, but I'm not so optimistic that they're going to agree on security issues. But the bigger stumbling block is the question of territory. As Zelensky was acknowledging, they are nowhere close yet on agreeing on the territory. Russia insists on getting the entirety of the Donbass. Zelensky only wants to give up the part that Russia now controls. So the sad thing, Zelensky said it's Groundhog Day, that he said the same thing a year ago. The sad thing is that, we warned a year ago that if this didn't come to an end, then we're going to be in the same place a year later with hundreds of thousands more dead, more infrastructure destroyed, more wealth being wasted. And we see the situation now in Ukraine, large parts of which don't have heat, don't have electricity, some don't have water. I mean, it's a tragic situation, and we do need to resolve this as quickly as we can.
And you mentioned security guarantees. Now, Ukraine and Russia have discussed the security guarantees, which U.S. seem to have agreed upon. At this point, can U.S. now convince Russia?
I doubt it. Zelensky wants Article 5 type guarantees. The United States has already said it's not going to send American troops. So the United States will provide intelligence, but Zelensky did something I thought was very stupid. He attacked the Europeans today. The Europeans have been his lifeline. When the United States stopped providing the aid, the Europeans came up with the money to buy the weapons from the United States. And today Zelensky was very, very critical of his European allies. That sure seemed like biting the hand that feeds him. I don't think they're going to take very well to that. At the same time, that Trump has been attacking them, that Trump is threatening NATO and threatening tariffs on NATO, European countries. This seems like a very bad move, a wrong move on Zelensky's part right now.
Right. I was actually just going to come to that because, yes, he did not seem happy about it. He talked about, how the Europeans and the groundhog, and he says that Europe needs to know how to defend itself. A year passed and nothing has changed, which is probably not wrong. How do you think that they, when it comes to these trilateral talks, what kind of role is Europe going to take place? And do you think that when these talks take place, Europe has any role?
It doesn't look like Europe's going to have any role. Just like they're not going to have a role on Trump's Board of Peace, if that ever happens. They're not going to have a role. They've been cut out of these negotiations. Trump has been very dismissive of them. His national security strategy warned about European civilizational erasure. It talked about how weak they are and how little influence they have in the world now. And so the European leaders, you look at it, Macron's approval ratings are between 11 and 15%. Starmer's approval ratings at home are 19%. Merz's approval ratings at home are 23%. They don't even have support in their own countries. And so they've been egging Ukraine on to keep fighting. But the Ukrainians are just in a very, very weak position, and they're going to be in a weaker position 6 months from now or a year from now than they are today. So I do want to see this end for the sake of everybody involved.
Right. And of course, as you mentioned, these talks somehow are pretty important. Seems to be the first one, hoping that it'll be at a positive note. But thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and giving your insights.
Thank you for having me.